Hello everyone and welcome to the very first edition of Shake and Share. I'm going to answer some of the questions that you guys posed me. I'm not going to get to all of them. You guys posed a bunch of them and some of them deserve some in-depth talk on their own. So I'm going to keep this first one a little bit, I would say lighthearted, but nothing about me is light. So let's get started. First up, let me just pour myself a nice big glass of Gainer Shake. Ooh. All right, take a couple sips and then we'll get going. Dripping already. All right, so the first question I got was, do you prefer, are you looking for a weight or a belly size? And then also, what is my current belly size, right? So for me, as we'll talk in a little bit more, it's a combination of both, right? Yes, I want to get bigger, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are distributions of fat that perhaps I'm not a fan of. So really it's going to be a combination. If suddenly I start to see something that, I don't like the look of that will supersede what the numbers are, right? And then they wanted to know some of my dimensions. So if you follow me on Gromer, you can see these updated on a regular basis on my profile. But right now, this neck that you can't see because of all the chins is 20 inches. The chest, which at this point are approaching breasts, is 59 inches. Up here at the narrowest part of my waist, is 56 3/4 inches. Across the belly button and love handles is 63.5 when standing and 68.5 when seated. And then across my hips and ass is 54 3/4. And each one of these thighs is 34 inches. So I'm sure some of you out there have waists that are smaller than each one of my thighs. So the next question was, how big do I want to get, right? So for me, I've always loved round numbers. I've always loved numbers, and then I love round numbers when it comes to gaining. So, my first target, the target I never really reached, is 400. After that, for the Brits, I want 30 stone, another nice round number. Then for the rest of the world, 200 kilos, then 60 BMI, which would be about 442 and change, then 450, and then, maybe a quarter ton. That kind of sounds like fun. Almost forgot the shake part of Shake and Share. What is my gaining journey was another question that I got. And corollary to that question, they wanted to know, who did I see that made me say I want to look, I want to be fat like them? I didn't really have that journey, right? I was always a chunky kid. For this scene, not anywhere near, these levels. But I was, heavy. And, in my early 20s, I probably got up to around 270 or so. Then I dropped down to about 230. I think around 230 is when I sort of found the gaining scene back then with Beefy Frat. But even then, I was more of an encourager than I was a gainer, right? I still wasn't comfortable with my fat. And I think I tried to find comfort in my fat by having helping other people get fat, right? Then there came a point where I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to diet. And I dieted down to about 175, right? But in my entire adult life, I've never worn less than a 36-inch waist, right? Even at 175. So, I was around 175 for a bit, then I went back up. Then I decided, okay, diet's not enough. I want to start working out. So I started working out, and I was, around 180, 190 with some muscle, not a whole lot of muscle, but, some. But I was sort of in this quasi land between, I was, too fat for the normal gays and too thin for the bears, right? I never really fit in. And, then work stress started piling on, family stress. And I found myself sitting at about 240, and I was actually kind of liking it, And around that time, there was a young Briton on Grommer who was encouraging me, and I got up to around 280, and I was like, you know what? Like, I think that was why I was never comfortable in my fat, was because, frankly, I wasn't fat enough, right? I think any gainer who's been through this knows that there's sort of like an awkward fat phase, and I seem to exist in that awkward fat phase. And once I really sort of embraced it, I was like, oh, I actually feel better, have more, feel sexier, have more gravitas, and all that by being fatter, right? And so from there, it just sort of, over the years, up to 330, 350, 380, and then just brushing 400 at 398 was my max. And then it just sort of, getting so close and not ever being able to get there just sort of wore me down. So I just sort of backed off. Grommer, the site got a little bit toxic. So I said, I'm just going to take a break. And I sort of went away, right? After that, I sort of came, when the pandemic happened, I came back. Again, just mostly seeing what it was going to do to everybody else. And, over the course of the pandemic, for the beginning of the pandemic, I was losing weight. I was probably the only person, well, not only, but, very few people were losing weight during the pandemic. So, then, sort of around, Christmas time last year, I just got the desire came back, like roaring back. And I decided that, starting with starting New Year's, I was going to give it a go again. And since New Year's Eve, 2020, so since, this past December, so 2.5 months ago, I have packed on 72 pounds. I'm 381 pounds this morning. I was 309 New Year's Eve morning. And I am loving it so much. So let me have some more shake to keep growing this. So the next question was sort of, what was your favorite surprise about gaining? And as my voice cracks, 46 years old and my voice is cracking. So as I mentioned, I had been down low before, right? I had been down to 175 just through diet. I had been down to about 180, 190 through, diet and exercise. But at both of those weights, I still had love handles. I had these freaking, as far as I was concerned, giant love handles, right? Now, obviously, these are giant love handles. Back then, not so giant. For reference, so here you can see at 175 and 180, 190, by far not love handles. but, you know, I felt they were massive. And so, you know, that's sort of been my biggest surprise, right? Is that right now, I love my love handles. You know, they're just soft enough, just wide enough for me. You know, they give me just a little bit of extra width without being too much. And I really, you know, that was something that really surprised me, given how much I hated. I mean, I cannot stress enough, hated my love handles when I was, you know, trying to lose weight. So, all right. So the last question, or second to last question is, have you ever belly pressed anyone to a wall? And the answer to that is yes. I've done it to a couple people. They also asked, you know, who was sort of the smallest person you had done. I want to say there was a guy who was about 120 or so at 6 feet, or thereabouts, like maybe 5'11". And so like he was sort of the slimmest person I had ever done that to. You know, really enjoyed it. I really love contrast. You know, I guess that's something I didn't touch on in the gaining journey, is that, you know, having accepted my weight, you know, I'm not terribly, you know, chub for chub, right? You know, for me, it is about that contrast. There's got to be significant contrast between me and the other person, you know, for it to be a real good match for me. And then the last question I'm going to answer for this one is, you know, sort of apropos. They asked, how many calzones can you eat in one sitting? So, you know, without being able to really ask them back for clarifying statements, you know, a calzone, generally speaking, is usually about the size of a medium pizza folded over, right? For reference, before I started chugging this shake, I had polished off for dinner tonight 2 large pepperoni pizzas. So that's maybe 2.5, 3 calzones. So that's your answer. And with that, I'm going to take a few final chugs of my shake. And I hope you enjoyed this first edition of Shake and Share. Went a little bit long. I tend to be a chatty Cathy when I'm a little bit nervous. As you know, I never thought I'd be doing something like this on YouTube and having 300 people follow me and, you know, tens of thousands of views. I know that's not a lot in the YouTube scape, but for a random 46-year-old fat man, it's quite a lot. And quite different. So, anyway, I hope you enjoy, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of this. Or not, because of brain freeze. It's the one problem with frozen stuff and shakes. Brain freeze. But trust, it's all going in this sucker. All right? You guys have a great rest of your weekend.